Hey guys, tonight we slip into the thick, green tangle of Borneo, where the air sticks to your skin, and every step sinks a little deeper into mud and mystery. You're hunched low, rifle slung across your back, ducking beneath vines thick as ship ropes. The jungle breathes around you. Damp. Lush. Alive. And in your hand? Not a weapon, not a map. No, it's a billy can. Because somehow, unbelievably, you're about to make tea. You probably won't survive this. Not the ambush waiting up the ravine, not the dysentery from yesterday's sketchy river refill, and definitely not the mold trying to colonize your boots. But still, you've got your tea gear. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch beneath broadleaf palms as the rain taps like fingers on your helmet. The squad's paused, 5 minutes, maybe less. A few blokes slump against gnarled tree trunks, their faces smeared with sweat and mud. Somewhere, someone's humming. And then, the familiar clink of metal against metal. Someone's pulling out the billy. It's strange, right? You're in a place that's basically designed to kill you. Japanese snipers in the hills, snakes the size of telephone poles, and humidity that can pickle a man's brain. And yet, what does everyone crave? A proper cup of tea. Not water. Not sleep. Not even a dry pair of socks, though that's a close second. It's always tea. The Australian diggers brought their tea habits with them to Borneo during World War II like it was an extra piece of kit. The military actually included tea in the ration packs, small brick-like chunks of loose black tea wrapped in wax paper. Usually Ceylon or Indian grown, strong enough to stand your spoon in. It wasn't gourmet. It wasn't clean. But it was home. And here's where things get slightly absurd. You're deep in the jungle, and your priorities haven't changed since Gallipoli: find cover, brew tea, survive. In that order. The billy can, let's talk about that. Yours is dented from being dropped down a rocky slope last week. One of the blokes has his tied to his pack with twine. It's more than just a tin can. It's a symbol. A ritual. Something passed around with reverence. You boil water in it, yes, but you also stare into it like it might give you the meaning of life. Back in Australia, the billy was a bush icon. Soldiers just adapted it for war. It's light, it heats fast, and if you're desperate, you can dig with it. Which you probably have. Several times. Now, there's a trick to making tea out here. No fancy kettles. No lovely ceramic mugs. You scoop water from a jungle stream, more on that later, and pour it into the billy. It's cloudy. It smells faintly of decaying leaves and frog. You light a fire with damp twigs and pray they catch. The fire's tiny, just enough heat, not enough smoke to give away your position. You're not exactly safe, remember? And the tea? Dump a spoonful of those dusty leaves in, stir with whatever is in your rifle barrel, and wait. This part, this waiting, it's holy. Blokes gather round like they're watching a campfire on a frosty night, not a nearly invisible flame and 90% humidity. There's banter. Always. Someone jokes about the last brew being strong enough to walk itself into your mug. Someone else mutters about the sergeant's bloody dishwater tea. You all pretend not to hear the bird calls that aren't quite birds. And here's a quirky bit for you. Some soldiers believed the tea had medicinal powers. Kept malaria away. Settled your guts. Gave you clarity under fire. One bloke swore he saw a mate survive a mortar blast because he was crouched down making tea at the time. Coincidence? Probably. But try telling him that. Historians still argue whether this devotion to tea was tactical morale building or just deep-rooted cultural obsession. You'd argue it's both. Because in this moment, it makes you feel human. A drop of rain plops into your half-boiled billy. You curse quietly. It doesn't matter. The water's nearly hot enough, and the tea leaves are swirling like smoke. You pull it off the flame with your sleeve, the handle's hot, of course. And then you wait. Just a minute. 2 if you're feeling extravagant. The first sip burns your tongue. It always does. That's part of the magic. It tastes like home and smoke and something vaguely metallic. A hint of jungle mud, probably. But it warms you from the inside. Not just the heat, something deeper. Like your soul just found a dry pair of socks. You pass the can to the next guy. He wipes the rim with his sleeve, as if that will do anything, and drinks. No one speaks much. Just the rain, the insects, and the almost imagined clink of mugs around the kitchen table back home. Sometimes the tea is bitter. Sometimes it's too weak. Once you accidentally steeped a dead insect in it. That was a low point. But most days it's perfect, because it exists. Because in a world of chaos, you can still make this one thing right. And there's comfort in the ritual. Unpack the billy. Build a tiny fire. Boil, steep, sip. Do it again tomorrow. And the next day. It's a routine, and routines are sanity out here. A few feet away, one of the new recruits is scribbling in a tiny notebook. He's drawn the billy can, actually. Sketching its dented body like it's the Mona Lisa. He'll probably turn that sketch into a tattoo when he gets back, if he gets back. You take another sip, this one cooler. Let it sit on your tongue. Let the jungle press in around you. And still, you've got your tea. You kneel in the soggy mulch and rummage through your haversack like a possum in a garbage bin. Mud's already caked along the seams, and the zipper sticks, but you know exactly what you're looking for. Not the dry socks, long gone, not the last cracker that tastes like a sandbag, but your most prized possession, the battered, blackened billy can. It clanks against your mess kit with that familiar hollow ring, dented and soot-streaked like it's been through a small war of its own. Which, in fairness, it has. You've used it to brew tea, heat beans, boil questionable river water, and once, memorably, to club a very surprised monitor lizard. Multipurpose doesn't even begin to cover it. This is standard kit for the Aussie digger in Borneo, 1945. The haversack, heavy with condensed history, rattles with tins of bully beef, boxes of hardtack, and sometimes, miracle of miracles, a tin of jam. But it's the billy, always the billy, that you check first. If it's missing, you're not just under-equipped. You're spiritually compromised. And tucked somewhere nearby, if you've been lucky with your latest rations, is a parcel of army-issue tea. It's not fancy. Just rough-cut black leaves packed into waxy paper or sealed inside little tins marked tea camouflaged. Camouflaged, yes. Because even your drink has to hide from the enemy. Welcome to the war. You shuffle the tea into your breast pocket for easy access. Rationing says you shouldn't brew more than 1 mug's worth a day, but reality says otherwise. Tea gets shared, reused, rebirthed. There's a hierarchy: fresh tea on the first go, character on the second, and on the third? Well, you're drinking leaf memory. At that point, you're mostly sipping optimism. Someone nearby mutters about losing his tin opener. Poor soul's doomed to chew through his rations like a beaver. Another bloke snorts, says he'll swap 3 cigarettes for half a tin of condensed milk. And the stakes? They've never felt higher. Food is fuel, sure, but tea is morale. It's comfort. It's an edible illusion of control. The billy can, now retrieved, still smells faintly of yesterday's brew. That's good. You like that. There's history in those layers of soot and tannin, a ghost of every fire you've crouched beside. You knock out a few stray ants, how they got in is a mystery, and give it a quick wipe with your sleeve. Sanitized enough for jungle standards. And now the ritual begins. Sort the leaves. Count them with your eyes like a gambler sizing up his last chips. Dump a fat pinch into the bottom of the can. No infusers out here, just raw, floating tea that'll cling to your tongue like guilt. You reach for your spoon, more of a bent bit of aluminum, really, and give the dry leaves a gentle stir. It's a fidgeting habit, more than necessary prep. You know this will all wait until the fire's going, but you can't help it. The act of preparing feels important. Feels safe. Here's your mainstream historical fact for this brew session. During the Borneo campaign, Australian forces operated in some of the most remote, thickly forested terrain they'd ever faced. Supply lines were patchy, resupply via air drop unreliable, and soldiers quickly learned to adapt their rations and expectations. Tea wasn't just comfort food, it was an item of psychological resilience. In diaries and letters, you'll find more praise for the billy than for most commanding officers. You look up and see your mate Jono, fiddling with his mess tin. He's one of those. Just pour the water over the leaves, guys. No ceremony. No soul. And yet he always manages to brew something that smells better than yours. Typical. Your own ration tin creaks open, revealing its contents: a mashed-up cracker, a suspiciously greasy chocolate bar, and a tiny envelope of powdered milk you've been hoarding like treasure. You eye it, then tuck it back in. Not today. This cup is going to be all about strength and clarity. There's something kind of beautiful, even absurd, about the way soldiers hoard and trade these rations. One bloke swapped a whole day's bully beef for a tin of real English tea, smuggled from a British unit down the coast. Another tried to boil his leaves in a helmet. That did not go well. Historians still argue whether the Australian obsession with tea during World War II was just cultural echo from the British Empire or a unique expression of Aussie practicality. After all, what other beverage lets you ignore the leeches crawling up your socks while pretending you're still in your grandmother's kitchen? You tap your haversack again, just to hear the reassuring rattle. Even with the rain, the insects, the dull ache in your back from sleeping on twisted roots, you know you'll be okay. As long as you've got tea. There's movement ahead. The corporal signals for a break, 5 minutes tops. The squad spreads out, each man a shadow beneath the ferns. You find a nook between two mossy logs, sit your billy down like it's a holy relic, and start mentally cataloging what you'll trade for a cube of sugar. The ants are back. Of course they are. You flick them off the handle and grin, because honestly, if a few ants are your biggest problem today, that's practically a vacation. You look at the can again, your little dented lifeline. If this war's taught you anything, it's that you can live without a lot: dry socks, clean water, privacy. But a day without tea? That's barbarism. And somewhere in the haze of fatigue, jungle heat, and the endless rustling of leaves that may or may not be snakes, you realize something: the tea isn't just a drink. It's proof that you still have choices. That you're still you. That even here, in this wild, wet green nowhere, you can pause and reclaim a little normal. You pick up the billy and nod to yourself. It's nearly time to build the fire. You crouch low, knees popping slightly as you shift on the slick jungle floor, and start the delicate dance of lighting a fire that won't get you killed. Easier said than done. The Borneo rainforest isn't exactly what you'd call fire-friendly. Everything is wet. The leaves are wet. The sticks are wet. You are wet. And still, the billy demands a flame. You've got a little stash of kindling wrapped in wax paper, hidden in the bottom of your pack like some secret contraband. Everyone carries something like it: dry lint from a pocket, a few shreds of newspaper, or, in one bloke's case, a stack of old love letters that weren't aging well. Poetic, if slightly combustible. You find your favorite fire spot, between two stones, shielded by ferns, with a sliver of air space just wide enough to breathe without giving off a plume of white betrayal. Because that's the danger. One puff of visible smoke curling up into the treetops, and a Japanese scout half a click away might decide your tea break is the perfect time for an ambush. You've heard stories, everyone has. That one patrol who boiled water near a ridge and got hit 10 minutes later. Was it the smoke? The smell? Or just bad luck? Historians still argue whether small campfire fires were a tactical risk worth taking or a foolish breach of stealth discipline. But in the moment, crouched with your nerves taut as fencing wire, tea still wins. You break twigs with a bit too much force. Slow down. The jungle listens. It's always listening. You gather just enough to start a tiny fire, no bigger than your palm. Anything more and you might as well wave a white flag shaped like a tea towel. Your matches are damp. Of course they are. You curse, very gently, and strike one against the box. Nothing. Another. It flares briefly, then fizzles out in a puff of pathetic smoke. You strike again, this time it catches. You shield it with your body like it's your firstborn child and coax it down into the wax paper and twigs. A curl of flame licks upward. You grin? It's the kind of grin you only flash when the jungle hasn't beaten you yet. There's a technique to all this. You build up the flames slow, layer by layer, twigs first, then finger-thick sticks, like you're constructing a tiny pagoda. The fire crackles, just loud enough to be comforting, not loud enough to echo. You glance around. Everyone else is doing the same dance, half scientific, half spiritual. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some diggers swore by lighting fires inside empty ration tins to further contain the glow. A sort of DIY jungle stove. It didn't always work, sometimes it just cooked the tin, but the effort was there. Australians were nothing if not innovative, especially when caffeine was on the line. You pull the billy from your kit, fill it with water that smells faintly like damp leaves and frogs, don't think about it, and place it over the fire using 2 rocks as a makeshift stand. Then you wait. This is the part where you're allowed to breathe. You watch the little bubbles start to form at the bottom of the billy, feel the heat start to radiate off the tin. You lean in just close enough to warm your face but not your eyebrows. Important distinction. It's funny, every time you make tea like this, it feels like the first time. There's a kind of pride in it, a primal satisfaction. You've created fire in a world designed to smother it. You've carved out a square foot of civilization in a wilderness that would rather chew you up. The corporal calls out softly, just a reminder to keep it quick. Patrols don't pause for long. You nod, already mentally preparing your exit strategy. You'll douse the fire with dirt, maybe a splash of leftover water if you're feeling generous, and scatter the ashes. Leave no trace. Like ghosts. But right now, in this moment, the billy is bubbling. You add the tea leaves like a chef seasoning a pot. Too little and it's swamp water, too much and you'll be jittery for hours. You give it a stir with your spoon, okay, your knife handle, don't judge, and the smell hits you. It's rich. Sharp. A little smoky. It cuts through the humid jungle air like a hymn. It doesn't smell like home exactly, but it smells like defiance. Like proof that you're still in charge of something, even if it's just your brew. Nearby, Jonah whispers, "Steady on with that flame, mate, or we'll be the main course." You smirk but nudge a fern over the fire anyway. No point tempting fate. The last thing you want is to get picked off mid-sip. And just as you think that, a distant crack splits the air. Rifle shot? Branch? You freeze. Everyone freezes. You don't breathe. 10 seconds pass. Nothing. False alarm. Probably a monkey dropping coconuts again. Little jerks. Still, your hand's on your rifle now. Just in case. The tea's ready. You lift the billy off the fire with a grunt and let it sit. You learn the hard way not to drink it straight from the boil. Mouth blisters do not mix well with jungle patrols. While it cools, you scatter the fire. Fast. Ashes go one way, rocks the other. You give the ground a pat, like saying goodbye to an old mate. Then you're back to the billy. You pour a bit into your mug, a chipped enamel number with half the blue paint worn off. The first sip is magic. Hot, strong, and alive. You exhale through your nose. Everything slows down for a beat. And that's the thing, isn't it? In the middle of a war, in the wettest, stickiest, leachiest place on earth, you still get this. A small fire. A cup of tea. A moment of stolen peace. One of the new guys burns his lips. Everyone chuckles. It's a rite of passage. You pass your billy to the next bloke without saying a word. You've got maybe 90 seconds left before the patrol moves again. But that's okay. That's enough time for one more sip. You rise to your feet with the faintest groan, your knees didn't used to sound like this, and swing the billy can, now empty and slightly sooty, back into its spot on your pack. Patrol's moving again. The fire is out, the ashes buried, the jungle has already started swallowing the scene behind you like it was never there. Now comes the part you dread more than leeches, finding water. Not just any water, drinkable water. Or at least, probably won't send you into intestinal meltdown by sunset. Water. You trudge downhill, boots squelching in black mud, eyes scanning ahead for signs of a stream. And soon enough you hear it, the low, gurgling chatter of a creek. Narrow, winding, partly hidden by the undergrowth. You push through palms and vines and finally kneel at its edge. It's shallow, more like a whisper than a river, but it moves. That's a good sign. Stagnant water is just nature's way of saying, boil me or suffer. You dip your billykin in slowly, watching as tadpoles scatter and bubbles pop on the surface. The water looks clearish, maybe a bit tea-colored from the tannins in the soil. Smells like mud and wet bark. Not exactly appetizing, but not immediately revolting either. That's a win in your book. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Australian troops in Borneo were trained to seek running water and always boil it before drinking, due to the high risk of waterborne diseases like dysentery, typhoid, and cholera. Some units carried purification tablets, chalky, bitter things, but those ran out fast, and most soldiers came to rely on the old-fashioned method, fire and faith. You scoop up half a billy's worth and glance around. No sign of movement. No rustle of enemy scouts. But the jungle's never quiet. Every tree creaks. Every insect clicks. Somewhere, a bird cackles like it knows something you don't. You give the stream one last look, half expecting it to turn into a crocodile, and step back up the bank. Now, here's where things get interesting. One of your mates, a bloke named Kev, insists there's a trick to finding the best water in the jungle. Look for the ones the monkeys drink from, he says, as though you've got time to interview passing orangutans about their hydration choices. He also once tried to filter river water through his sock. That did not go well. But Kev's got competition. Corporal Finley swears by collecting rainwater off banana leaves. He even fashioned a makeshift funnel system once using 2 helmets and a length of bamboo. Took him hours. Produced about 1 mug's worth. Tasted like leaf and metal. He claimed it was refreshing. Everyone else quietly stuck to the stream. Historians still argue whether the field manuals prepared troops adequately for the reality of jungle water sourcing. On paper, it's all about filtration, boiling, discipline. In practice, you use what's there. You boil it if you can. And you hope the jungle hasn't saved a parasite just for you. You make your way back to the group, the billy swinging at your side. Someone's already reigniting the fire from earlier, just embers now, coaxed back to life with bits of bark and whispered swearing. You nod, set your can beside it, and start the waiting game again. This time, the water takes longer to boil. Maybe it's because the rain's just started, again, and the air is heavy with steam. Or maybe the sticks are too damp. You blow on the flame gently, shielding it with your body, and curse the monsoon under your breath. Insects buzz around your neck like tiny helicopters. You sweat at them half-heartedly. While you wait, you remember a story, something you heard from an older guy in a different platoon. He said they once found a perfect pool in a rocky outcrop, clear as glass. No animal tracks, no algae. They filled every container they had, and an hour later, half the squad was doubled over. Turns out, it was rainwater that had collected in a hollow tree trunk upstream, then filtered through some sort of poisonous plant root. Nature's practical joke, he called it. You watch the billy. No bubbles yet. To pass the time, you count your bites. Left ankle 3. Right shin 7. Something definitely crawled up your sleeve earlier, but you haven't worked up the courage to investigate. You scratch anyway. Steam finally begins to curl up from the billy's surface. You lean closer. Tiny bubbles. The good kind, not gas bubbles from some half-rotted streambed, but real, rolling signs of heat. You shift it slightly to even out the boil and wait for that first hiss, that angry sputter that says, "This water has repented. You may now drink it." And here's the thing nobody tells you, watching water boil in the jungle isn't boring. It's tense. It's personal. Because you've risked movement, time, and attention to make this happen. Every second the fire's burning, there's a chance it's visible to someone you can't see. So when it does boil, when it finally reaches that rolling, churning state, you feel relief like you've just completed a secret mission. You've transformed a jungle stream into something safe. Well, safer. You pull the billy from the flame using a stick this time, live and learn, and let it cool. You're tempted to dump the tea in straight away, but you've learned better. Let the water rest. Let it stop its angry dance before you ask it to be kind. And there it is, the ritual, again. Scoop, boil, breathe, wait. It never feels redundant. If anything, it's the only consistent thing you have out here. Someone nearby grumbles about jungle rations. Another guy claims he once made tea using water from inside a green coconut. Tasted like armpit, he admits. But he still drank it. And you will too. Whatever the source, however questionable the stream, if it boils, it brews. You pour a bit into your tin cup, add your leaves, stir slowly. The tea comes out darker this time. Earthy. Maybe it absorbed some of the jungle's secrets along the way. You take your first sip and, yep, still tastes like home. You swirl the liquid in your cup, watching the tea leaves dance in lazy spirals. The smell hits you again, dark, smoky, with a hint of something you can't quite place. Possibly river moss. Possibly yesterday's socks. But it's strong. Strong enough to wake you up and slow you down at the same time. The kind of strength that tastes like defiance. Army issue tea isn't here to be liked. It's not a soothing chamomile. It doesn't come with a biscuit on the side or a friendly cafe barista asking how your day's going. No, this tea is a black, bitter reality check. It's made to punch your taste buds and keep you alert when the leeches and monsoon rains are conspiring to turn your brain to pudding. You lift the cup again, blow on it out of habit, and take a long sip. Yep. Still rough. Still excellent. You savor the moment, even though the jungle hums all around you like a living thing, buzzing, chirping, creaking like it might swallow you whole. But you've got tea. And that makes it okay. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The tea issued to Australian soldiers during World War II was typically a robust blend of Indian and Ceylonese black teas, designed for strength, not subtlety. The leaves were coarsely chopped and packaged in ration tins or small paper parcels. No sugar. No milk. Just hot leaf juice, brutal and beautiful in equal measure. As you sip, you feel the warmth creep outward from your core. It doesn't just fight the damp in your bones, it feels like armor. Not physical, but mental. Like with every sip, you're stitching a bit more courage back together. And of course, you're not alone in this. You glance around at your mates. Half of them are sipping from mismatched mugs or billy lids turned into makeshift cups. Jono's still using his mess tin, because he insists the extra width releases the aroma. Nobody's buying it. Then there's Mick. Always one to push boundaries, he tried crushing the tea leaves into a paste once, reckoned it'd be faster to chew it like tobacco. The experiment ended with him coughing up black goo and declaring war on all things herbal. But it did earn him the squad record for most committed caffeine seeker. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some soldiers added army-issued salt tablets to their tea by mistake, thinking they were sugar. One sip later, they'd created what became known unofficially as jungle broth. It wasn't good. But oddly, a few blokes started pretending it was. Acquired taste, they said. You suspect that was just pride. You take another sip and lean back against a root thick enough to be part of the Earth's spinal column. The tea's cooled slightly, less punch, more nuance now. Still no milk though. Or sugar. Or anything resembling luxury. But there are rumors. Oh yes. Whispers of hidden tins of condensed milk, illicit treasure hoarded by the officers or tucked away by quartermasters who knew how to bargain. The idea of adding sweet, sticky white nectar to your brew feels about as realistic as riding a unicorn through this jungle, but still, you imagine it. Creamy. Sweet. Thick enough to coat the spoon. You sigh and look down at your very not creamy tea. No unicorn today. And yet you're weirdly content. The jungle may be alive with things that want to eat you, bite you, or lay eggs in your socks, but for the length of this cup, you're untouchable. Historians still argue whether tea truly affected morale in tangible, measurable ways. Some point to field reports that noted improved mental resilience among troops who adhered to daily rituals, like tea making. Others say it's romantic nonsense, just soldiers clinging to habit. But you know, when everything else is chaos, one consistent thing becomes holy. You drain the last mouthful. The leaves cling to the bottom, a little soggy bouquet. You give the cup a swirl, then tip it back to chew the final dregs. It's part of the experience. You never let good tea go to waste, even if it means munching on a small leaf salad at the end. Nearby, someone's complaining about their brew being too earthy. Another bloke smirks, says, "That's not earth, mate, that's the inside of your billy." A brief chorus of laughter bubbles up, then fades just as quickly, swallowed by the trees. It's getting darker now. The jungle seems to squeeze tighter as the sun ducks behind the canopy. Shadows stretch. Sounds shift. You know this moment well, the point when everything starts to feel more alive. The vines seem to twitch. The frogs start practicing for their night opera. The breeze turns cool but carries the scent of something ancient. You pack away your mug, clinking it gently back into your kit. The billy can's still warm. You'll keep it close tonight, maybe tuck it under your jacket like a poor man's hot water bottle. Someone once joked you loved that billy more than your girlfriend back home. They weren't wrong. A mosquito lands on your cheek. You slap it absently. You've given up trying to win that war. You're pretty sure half your blood is in the insect population by now. But hey, at least they don't want your tea. One of the new lads pipes up, asking if you ever get tired of the taste. Nah, you say. But if I do, I just imagine it's whiskey. He laughs, even though he knows it isn't funny. That's the thing out here. Humor becomes ritual, too. Even bad jokes taste better in the bush. The squad starts to shift again. Time to move. You shoulder your pack and glance back at the clearing. Already the jungle's erasing the scene, leaves falling, vines swaying, birds swooping low like they own the place. And they do. But for a few minutes you made it yours. You brewed tea in the belly of the wild. And that's victory. You march on, the weight of the billycan swinging gently against your pack, half a heartbeat with every step. The tea still sits warm in your belly, grounding you as the jungle tightens once again, vines drooping low like accusations, trees leaning in like gossiping old men. Every leaf drips. Every root coils like it's got a vendetta. And you keep moving. The squad's in single file now, each bloke 10 paces apart, eyes scanning, boots sinking just enough to remind you the ground is always halfway to being soup. The fire's long behind you, and the smell of smoke is mostly scrubbed from your gear, though maybe not from your hands. You sniff your fingers and catch that faint charcoal tang. It's not unpleasant. You think about the next brew. You always do. Because it's not just a drink, it's a waypoint. It divides the day into manageable chunks. March, brew. Wait, brew. Watch, brew. And now? You're thinking about the boil. You're thinking about that bubble. You remember what old Sergeant Vale once said, "Tea doesn't just brew. It proves." At the time you laughed, figured he was being poetic because he'd gone without sleep for 3 days. But he had a point. Boiling that water was proof. Proof you'd found fuel, found fire, found time. Proof you could impose control on this green, dripping madness. And now, as your boots slide over mossy rocks and duck under spiderwebs thick enough to be hammocks, you're thinking about the boil again. It's always a moment. Always a battle. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Jungle warfare in Borneo was defined by constant damp. Everything, clothes, weapons, rations, was soaked. Fires were difficult to start and harder to maintain, making the act of boiling water not just practical, but also a deeply symbolic victory over the elements. Tea, in that context, became almost an act of rebellion. You stop at the next rest point, a half-cleared patch beneath a towering banyan. The squad fans out, rifles pointed outward in casual but constant readiness. You shrug off your gear and get to work. The fire comes harder this time. The rain's heavier. The wood is moodier. You kneel like a medieval alchemist, huffing over a handful of twigs that refuse to ignite. Every soldier around you is doing the same. Fire making has become a communal frustration, a kind of synchronized cursing. You finally get yours to catch. Barely. Just a thin tongue of flame, dancing like it's embarrassed to be seen. You guard it with your whole body, like it owes you money. The water goes in. Same billy. Same process. And now you wait again. The mosquitoes are out in force now, their whine in your ears like tiny dentists with very sharp drills. One lands on your knuckle. You slap it, wince, watch a smear of your own blood bloom under your fingernail. It's weird, somehow, that little sting makes the tea more urgent. More necessary. You hunch over and squint into the billy. Tiny bubbles rise from the bottom, hover, pop. You know this stage, it's the pre-boil. The tea's not hot enough to kill the germs. Not cool enough to drink. Like the jungle, it taunts you with almost. You remember the old jungle trick, spitting into the water and watching how fast the bubbles disperse. If they vanish quickly, it's not boiling yet. If they hang around, it's hot enough to cook a toad. Not scientific, exactly, but it's served generations of grumpy tea drinkers well enough. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some diggers swore the speed of the boil could predict incoming rain. If it took too long, they'd say, "Storm's coming." If it boiled quick, it meant fair weather. No one ever recorded this in a field manual, but it was accepted wisdom, right up there with, "Never sit where the ants are." A faint pop. Then another. The lid of the billy shudders. Steam curls out in a tight, triumphant ribbon. You lean back, satisfied. Another victory, small and steaming. You let it sit for just a minute, time enough to swap bites with Jono, who's somehow gotten his hands on a stale scone from a British unit a week back. He breaks it in half and it crumbles like plaster. Still, you both dip it into your tea and chew like it's a scone from the Queen's own kitchen. Hunger edits your expectations quickly. Historians still argue whether soldiers romanticize these tea breaks in post-war memory, or whether they truly offered psychological sanctuary. But for you, there's no question. This isn't nostalgia. This is now. And now, this tea is the best thing that's happened all day. You pass the billy. Mick takes a sip, winces. Strong enough to wake the dead. He mutters, then goes back for a second swig. No complaints. Nobody ever complains about tea in the jungle, not really. Even the bad brews are better than none. The moment stretches. The air grows heavier. Dusk isn't just a change in light here, it's a change in feeling. The jungle goes from hot breath to cold whisper. You sip again. The tea's cooler now, but still strong. You try to ration it, make it last until the last drop tastes like triumph. Another mosquito lands. You ignore it. Not worth breaking the moment. Someone laughs softly behind you. A joke about the sergeant's infamous foot stew. A horrible tea-like concoction he once made after mistakenly using sock washing water. He claimed it added character. The memory has become a cautionary legend. You let the last of your tea slide down your throat. It's metallic, bitter, oddly floral at the finish. A jungle sommelier would call it bold, with notes of desperation. But to you, it's perfect. And just as the squad begins to pack up again, rifles clicked back into ready position, you seal the billy, sling it back into its place, and stand. Your belly's warm. Your shoulders ache. Your boots squelch. But your blood is moving. The jungle waits, dark and sprawling, but you've already won a tiny battle inside it. Because you boiled water in mosquito hell. And you drank tea. You trudge forward, soaked to the bone, skin itching from mosquito bites and whatever jungle gunk has crawled into your socks. Your pack squeaks with every step, waterlogged canvas groaning like it's tired of the war, too. But inside, nestled right beside your spare socks and a half-eaten ration bar, the billykin rides quietly. Still warm. Still holding the echo of that last brew. You think about that sip, the heat, the bite, the raw simplicity of it. It wasn't good, not really. It was strong. Functional. Kind of like the squad, when you think about it. Rough around the edges, too many old dents, but still doing the job. The path climbs now steeper, roots twisting like snakes across the trail. You breathe hard through your nose, counting steps, ignoring the cramp crawling up your thigh. You're tired. Everyone's tired. But no one says it. What they do say, as the incline eases and a clearing opens up, is this: "Time for a cuppa?" It's not really a question. It's a call to arms. You drop your pack and glance around. A rocky outcrop offers a bit of cover, a few fat leaves for sitting, and enough of a gap in the canopy to let smoke vanish into the dusk. That'll do. Everyone's setting up without orders, some gathering twigs, others pulling out tins, one bloke just stretching his back like a rusty folding chair. And you? You're already prepping the billy. This time, you're adding something special. Not army issue. Not rationed. But a tiny gift smuggled from a native trader down by the coast, a pinch of crushed cinnamon bark. Smells like warmth, like the ghost of pastry. You keep it tucked in a twist of waxed paper, hidden between pages of an old letter from home. Every now and then, you take it out and pretend it's Christmas. Here's your mainstream historical fact. During the Borneo campaign, Australian soldiers often supplemented their rations with local ingredients when they could, either trading with friendly Dayak villagers or scavenging jungle plants known to be safe. It added variety, sure, but also a momentary connection to something outside the war. You sprinkle the cinnamon in as the water begins to warm. The leaves go in next, swirling as if they know they're in for something better than usual. You lean back, just for a second, and breathe it in. It's different. Still strong, still black as night, but now with a whisper of spice. Something that doesn't taste like ration tin or battlefield smoke. You take a cautious sip, and yeah, that's a good one. Smooth, woody, like it belongs in a cafe instead of a combat zone. Nearby, Jono raises an eyebrow. What's that smell? You holding out on us? You pass the billy over without a word. He sips, blinks, then grins. Bloody hell. You've gone gourmet. You shrug like it's no big deal, but your chest swells a bit. In this place, with these guys, making a decent brew is the closest thing to sainthood. Now here's your quirky tidbit. One of the lads, Mick of course, once tried adding jungle mint to his tea after seeing a Dayak scout chewing the leaves. Claimed it opens the sinuses. Which it did. Also made the tea taste like toothpaste and regret. But he drank it anyway. Twice. The fire crackles low, the sound barely louder than the rain dripping from the canopy. It's a quiet moment. No one's talking much now. Just sipping, staring into the middle distance. You hear the rustle of something slithering through the undergrowth, but it's far enough away not to matter, unless it's circling, of course, in which case, well, you finish your tea first. You glance at the new kid, Private Laird, 19 and still baby-faced, though the jungle's been hard at work on him. He's sitting cross-legged, staring into his mess tin, cradling it like it might tell him something important. He takes a sip and flinches. Too hot. Too strong. But he doesn't stop. Because even if it scalds your mouth, you drink. Even if it tastes like tree bark and regret, you drink. That's how the ritual goes. Historians still argue whether this reliance on tea was just a psychological coping mechanism, or a symptom of deeper nostalgia for home and routine. You reckon it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it works. You drain the last of your cinnamon brew, roll the dregs around your tongue. The tea's gone bitter at the bottom, oversteeped and slightly gritty. But the warmth remains. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand and stifle a burp, quietly, respectfully, like a monk ending prayer. The billy comes back your way, still half full, passed from mate to mate with the reverence of sacred relics. You don't need a sermon out here. You've got tannin and tin. Someone jokes about opening a cafe when the war's over. Call it jungle brew. All leaves, no milk, no mercy. You laugh, and the sound feels strange, like a muscle you haven't used in weeks. But it's good. It shakes some of the damp from your bones. Then someone else offers a name. Digger's Delight. Every cup comes with a free leech. You nearly choke on the last mouthful. Worth it. A mosquito lands on your lip. You swat it and immediately regret that decision. Lip stings are not the mood you were aiming for. But still, you're grinning as you dump out the dregs and rinse the billy with a splash of leftover water. Not clean. Just jungle clean. Which is really just less dirty than before. The fire's down to coals. Time to pack up. You give the billy one last glance before you stow it. A dent here, a scorch mark there. It's a mess. But it's your mess. It's your lifeline. And right now, it's the best thing you own. As the squad rises and the clearing fades back into undergrowth, you feel that old ache return, shoulders, feet, knees, soul. But the tea's still in your blood. Still burning. Still reminding you who you are. You brewed something different today. Something better. And out here, that means everything. You move out again, boots squelching in rhythm, breath steady but shallow. The cinnamon's ghost still lingers in your mouth, faint but persistent, like the last warm note of a song that won't quite end. You're not thinking about tea now. Not consciously. But it's there. In your chest. A low, slow hum beneath the wet slap of leaves and the buzz of insects. Ahead, the jungle dips into a narrow ravine. Steep walls, dense canopy, roots everywhere. The kind of terrain that whispers ambush, and not in a friendly voice. You grip your rifle tighter and lower your head as you descend. The vines cling, the mud pulls. You start to sweat under your pack all over again. Tea warmth and jungle heat wrestling inside you like two angry snakes. Halfway down, you catch a strange smell. Not rot. Not sweat. Something sweet? Herbal? You pause, sniff, then glance sideways, where a scout from the local unit squats beside a tree, rubbing something between his palms. He looks up, catches your eye, and grins. You wander over, cautious but curious. He speaks a little English, enough to say, "Mint. From river. Good smell. Good tea." You lean closer. Sure enough, the crushed leaves give off a sharp, clean scent, like spearmint and rain. You raise an eyebrow. He nods, pulls a flask from his belt, and adds a pinch of them into it before taking a sip. Then, with a gesture, he offers some to you. You hesitate, just long enough to feel rude, then accept. One careful mouthful. Whoa. It's not your tea. Not by a long shot. There's no tannin kick, no bitterness, no memory of tin cans and army socks. But it's fresh. Green. Alive in a way that almost makes you suspicious. You nod, hand it back, and manage a weak smile. Too civilized, you mutter. He chuckles anyway. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Many Allied troops in Southeast Asia learned basic plant knowledge from local guides, scouts, resistance fighters, and indigenous trackers. The exchange wasn't always formal, but it saved lives. And it sometimes, wonderfully, improved the tea. Later that day, during a brief stop near a stream, this one clear, shallow, and blissfully crock-free, you try it yourself. A few crushed leaves, a short boil, a cautious steep. The result? Not bad. Not exactly tea. But something that feels like tea. Like the jungle version of what you've known all your life. Jono's skeptical. Tastes like toothpaste, he says. Mick, always the chaos agent, tries adding salt and calls it bush tonic. He drinks 2 cups. You're not sure whether to admire him or start digging his grave. But something's changed. The jungle doesn't feel quite as indifferent as it did before. You've borrowed something from it now. Made peace with a part of it. Instead of fighting for a brew, you've asked politely. And it said yes. That night, under a low tarp strung between 2 trees, you open your pack and pull out your tea kit, such as it is. A pouch of leaves, the now beloved billy, and a small twist of that river mint wrapped in wax cloth. You add it to your brew almost without thinking. It's a strange combo. Familiar black tea and wild mint, steeped together over a fire barely big enough to warm your boots. The result is sharp, dark, and oddly elegant. If you close your eyes, you can almost pretend you're sitting on a veranda somewhere far away, clean clothes, dry feet, a breeze instead of sweat. Almost. And here's your quirky tidbit. In one unit, the fellas started naming their tea blends. Jungle Classic. For the basic black. Mossy Swirl. For anything filtered through too many socks. Ghost Brew. For the one time someone added powdered milk that had expired during the last war. The name stuck, and the brews became legends. You call yours River Runner. Not bad, you reckon? Has a ring to it. You take your cup and wander a few steps away from the group. Just enough distance to hear the jungle again. Real jungle, not human noise. The frogs. The drip of water from the leaves. The rustle of something big in the bushes that you very deliberately decide not to think about. You sit on a fallen log, one boot off, checking your foot for blisters. The tea balances on your knee. Steam curls up into the night air like a lazy spirit, like smoke with nowhere to go. You breathe in through your nose, deep and slow. Historians still argue whether this kind of adaptation, borrowing from local culture, even for something as trivial as tea, signified flexibility or desperation. You'd say both. Why not? The jungle doesn't care where you're from. It only cares whether you're paying attention. And right now you are. You sip again. This time you taste the river, the bark, the memory of the mint crushed between someone else's hands. You think of the scout. Wonder where he is now. Probably tucked into a tree branch somewhere, sleeping like a possum. Back at the tarp, someone's humming. You can't place the tune. Sounds like a lullaby. Or maybe something made up on the spot. You close your eyes and sip again. There's an odd comfort in this kind of tea. It's not about nostalgia. It's not about home. It's about here. Now. This jungle, this fire, this night. You're not trying to recreate what you had. You're just trying to make what you have a little better. You finish the cup, rinse it with the last of your canteen water, and hang it from the tarp line to dry. The billy you clean with a handful of wet leaves, not that it'll ever be really clean again. It's got memory baked in. Heat marks, scratches, soot layered like rings on a tree. You wouldn't trade it for anything. You stretch, yawn, scratch behind your knee, and settle into the canvas ground sheet like it's a 5-star bed. The night air is cool now. Almost refreshing. One more tea down. Maybe your strangest one yet. But not your last. You wake before dawn, or maybe you never really slept. The jungle doesn't do silence. Even at night, there's a constant low murmur, the wheeze of frogs, the hiss of rain on leaves, the distant crack of something heavy moving through underbrush that definitely wasn't wind. Sleep is less of a full shutdown and more like a software update. You lie there, eyes closed, half listening, half praying, fully exhausted. And yet, before the sun cracks the sky, you're up. Slowly. Stiffly. Everything aches. Your hip feels like it spent the night arguing with a rock, which it probably did. You check your feet first, still attached, still damp, only moderately invaded by trench rot. Good enough. The patrol isn't moving yet, but everyone's stirring. Whispered yawns, the rustle of packs, the unmistakable creak of someone attempting to wring water out of their socks like laundry day at the world's worst spa. And through all that, one question emerges, unspoken but universal. Tea? Of course. You reach for the billycan without thinking. It's instinct now. Like checking your weapon, like scanning the tree line. You build a tiny fire with last night's embers, nurse it like a sick child, and get the billy on as the rest of the world blinks awake. The first brew of the day is the sacred one. The tactical one. Because you might be under fire in 20 minutes. You might be dead in 30. But you are going to have your tea. This one, though, is different. Because this one? You're boiling while listening to mortar fire echo down the valley. You freeze mid-stir. It's far, but not far enough. Dull, thudding bursts, like someone slapping the earth with a giant hand. You glance up at the corporal. He's crouched still, listening. Then, keep low. Fast brew. We're moving in 10. So now, instead of a leisurely ritual, you're in a full-blown speed steep. You practically will the water to boil, hands twitching, eyes darting between the fire and the tree line. It bubbles. It hisses. You throw in the tea like it owes you money. No mint this time. No special bark. Just black leaf and adrenaline. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Many soldiers in the Pacific Theater developed the ability to brew and drink tea even under imminent threat. It became a tool of focus as much as comfort. Veterans often recall drinking tea just before, during, or even immediately after firefights, not out of bravado, but necessity. You needed something to steady your hands. And that's what this cup does. You take the first scalding sip while kneeling behind a rotting log, eyes scanning the treetops, heart galloping. The tea is bitter, oversteeped, far too hot, but it clears your mind. Anchors you. The squad's moving now. You drink fast, careful not to spill. The billy still sizzles as you pour the rest into a shared tin cup. Jono's turn. He gulps it down like medicine, muttering, "Better than morphine." Probably not true. But you get his point. The patrol moves out in a crouch. Low, quick, silent. Rifles up, eyes everywhere. And you? You're still holding the warmth in your gut like a tiny sun. 15 minutes in, you hit contact. Crack, crack, crack. Muzzle flashes in the trees, bark exploding near your shoulder, someone yelling. You dive, roll, land hard against a root the size of your torso. Your rifle's already in your hands. You return fire on instinct, not aiming so much as asserting existence. And in the middle of all that, you notice, your hands aren't shaking. That tea? It worked. The fight doesn't last long. Most don't. A few bursts, a few shouted commands, and then silence. Deafening silence. You wait. You breathe. Nobody's dead. One bloke's got a graze on his arm. Another's covered in someone else's leaf litter. You regroup, you count heads, you move. And later, when it's safe enough, you brew again. Because the tea isn't just comfort. It's continuity. It's your flag. Your line in the dirt. Your refusal to be unmade by the madness around you. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some units, soldiers carried lucky tea tins, crushed flat and worn around their necks like medals. One bloke had a tin that caught a bullet. Didn't stop it, exactly, but slowed it just enough to turn a gut wound into a leg wound. He called it his divine tea break. Historians still argue whether tea drinking in combat zones was an act of defiance or desperation. You reckon it's both. Because in the middle of a firefight, when the world is a strobe of noise and panic, boiling water might just be your greatest weapon. You sit in a ravine now, post-contact, watching steam rise from your mug while someone changes the dressing on a bandaged forearm nearby. You sip. No talking. No jokes this time. Just heat. Just the knowledge that you're still breathing. The brew is stronger now. Maybe from the extra leaves. Maybe from something deeper. It tastes like metal and ash. Like focus. Like proof that you've survived again. You pour a bit into your mate's canteen lid, hand it over. He nods, drinks, lets out a breath that sounds like a prayer. Then comes the whisper. "Another one?" You smile. Even now. Especially now. You're crouched low beside a jungle fern the size of a small car, swatting leeches from your bootlaces while balancing a tin mug of still steaming tea in one hand. You think war and tea don't mix, but here you are, sipping like some damp, muddy aristocrat in the world's worst spa retreat. The morning skirmish already feels like a fever dream, distant and grainy, like it happened to someone else. There's that strange sensation that always follows combat, silence louder than gunfire, sweat already drying, adrenaline fading into a sort of soft, nauseating fatigue. And into that void comes the tea. Again. Your third cup today. It's strong. Bitter. A bit gritty from reused leaves. But it's warm and real and tastes a little less like boot polish than usual. You take a slow sip, then reach into your breast pocket for something almost sacred, a letter from home. It's crumpled. Torn at one corner. The ink has run in places, especially where the rain caught you that night under the broken tarp. But you've read it enough times that you don't need the words to be clear. You know the rhythm. You can almost hear the voice behind the pen. Your sister's handwriting loops across the page. She tells you about a neighbor's wedding, about the dog chewing up the back fence, about Mom pretending not to cry when she reads your last letter. And none of it's urgent. None of it's dramatic. But that's what makes it so powerful. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Mail delivery, though sporadic and often delayed by weeks, remained one of the most critical morale tools for Allied troops during the Borneo campaign. A single letter could ground a soldier more effectively than any lecture or official report. And nothing paired better with those quiet moments of homesickness than tea. You take another sip, and it's like each word on that page is steeped into the brew. A memory in every swallow. You even start reading aloud, quietly, just to yourself. Not loud enough for the others to hear, but enough that your voice breaks the silence. A leech wriggles from under your cuff. You flick it off with practiced ease. Just part of the ambience now. You could start charging these things rent. Nearby, someone's brewing their own cup. You hear the tin clink, the soft fizz of wetwood catching flame. Jono's voice floats through the leaves. Swear this Billy's growing things. Pretty sure it tried to bite me. You smile, fold the letter again, and tuck it back into your pocket. Safe. Dryish. Then you notice it, something floating in your tea. Tiny. Leggy. Yep. That's a drowned insect. You fish it out with the end of a spent matchstick, flick it into the underbrush, and take another sip. It's still good. Somehow. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some diggers kept a tea diary, marking down brews of note, exceptionally strong ones, questionable additives, strange drinking locations. One legendary entry simply read: tea under sniper fire. 7 out of 10. Would not repeat. You've never written one down, but you keep your own mental tally. This one, letter in hand, leech on boot, bug in cup, rates a solid 8.5. Could have been a 9 with sugar. You look up to see Mick, yes, that Mick, tilting his head as he reads an old newspaper clipping. He's got it laminated in tape, like some jungle relic. It's from home, too, footy scores, of all things. Every time he reads it, he acts like the match just ended yesterday. He sees you looking, holds up the clipping. Reckon I should send this to the Japanese? Let 'em know Carlton's still on top. Maybe send them a tea bag instead. You reply. See if they'll call it off for a cuppa. He nods solemnly. Diplomacy. I like it. Historians still argue whether frontline rituals, tea, letters, jokes, were coping mechanisms or unintentional acts of resistance. But when you're here, when the mud has taken over your socks and the flies are doing aerial maneuvers around your ears, you know the truth. They're survival tactics. You glance at the letter again, imagining your sister at the kitchen table, kettle boiling in the background, sun pouring through the window. She's probably drinking tea, too. Maybe even thinking of you. Maybe not. Maybe just letting life happen. And there's comfort in that, strangely. Life continues. The world still spins. Tea still brews. Even when you're soaked to the ribs and your hands won't stop shaking after a firefight, that truth holds. You finish the cup. Last drop's gone lukewarm, but you tip it back anyway. You pat your chest pocket, the letter's safe. The billycan's already cooling by your feet, ash-dusted and half-dented from being dropped earlier when someone screamed about a massive bloody spider. It was, in fact, average-sized. You stretch your legs, stand up slowly. The ache in your back is permanent now, but so is the rhythm. Walk, crouch, brew, drink, survive. Repeat. And as the patrol preps to move again, you feel something small but steady inside you. Not joy. Not courage, exactly. Just continuity. Another letter. Another leech. Another cup of tea. And somehow, that's enough. You move past the bend in the trail where the trees press tighter than usual, like they're trying to listen in. You've learned to duck there automatically. Something about the way the canopy angles just right to funnel sound like a cathedral whisper. No one talks through it anymore. You just move through quiet. Up ahead you spot it, a dugout. Not yours. Not for grunts like you. This one's tidier. Better concealed. The kind of shelter officers call a temporary post, but somehow ends up with a canvas awning, a folding stool, and today, the unmistakable aroma of luxury. You'd recognize that smell anywhere. Condensed milk. You pause a moment too long. The corporal notices. Keep walking, he mutters, just loud enough for your ears. But your eyes linger. Just a heartbeat. There it is, a white enamel mug. Actual ceramic. With a bloody handle. Resting on a flat stone like some relic from a museum. And beside it, the tin, opened, half-used, and glinting like treasure. You trade your left boot and maybe 3 tins of bully beef for that tin. You imagine it. A swirl of sweet milk tumbling into black tea, clouding it into brown velvet. Creamy. Rich. A taste that might actually remind you of peacetime, of a kitchen bench and a biscuit dunked until it breaks in the cup. You taste it in your mind, and then, just like that, it's gone. Back to the mud. The marching. The familiar echo of your boots, your heartbeat, your empty enamel mess tin rattling in your pack. You keep walking. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Officers on the front lines, particularly those from British or higher-ranking Australian units, often had access to better rations, including luxuries like condensed milk, cocoa powder, and even the occasional tin of fruit. It wasn't standard issue, but it was reality. And yes, the rank and file noticed. Later, during a rest stop, you bring it up. Carefully. Like poking at a bruise. Reckon the captain shares that milk tin? You ask, nonchalant. Jono snorts. Reckon he guards it like it's the Ark of the Covenant. You ever had milk in the jungle? You ask. Mick shrugs. Had some once. 2 drops. It made my tea taste like a war crime. I cried anyway. Everyone laughs. You do too. But the longing's still there. You know it's irrational. You know a spoonful of sweetened goo won't win the war. But you also know this: taste matters. Texture matters. And after weeks of gritty leaf water, the mere idea of a creamy, milky tea starts to feel like hope with a tin lid. That night, around the fire, someone tells a story about a bloke in another unit who stole a tin of condensed milk from an officer's pack. Got caught. Wasn't court-martialed, but he had to peel spuds for 2 weeks and was denied tea rations for 3 days. 3 whole days. Everyone gasps like it's a ghost story. And really, it kind of is. You look down at your own tea, brewed strong and dark, the leaves floating like tiny ghosts on the surface. No milk. No sugar. No luxury. Just tannin, fire, and willpower. And still, it does the job. You sip. It's not creamy. But it's honest. You've brewed it over flame, in a jungle full of snakes, leeches, and people who'd very much like to see you dead. There's pride in that. You've made something civilized in the middle of madness. Still, you can't help but imagine it. One little splash. Just once. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some units, a sort of black market bartering system developed around rare luxuries like condensed milk. Soldiers would swap boots, letters, even extra ammo for just a spoonful. It was currency. Liquid gold. Sometimes literally smuggled in socks. You eye your mates. You trust them in a firefight. But if one of them had a secret stash of condensed milk, all bets are off. Historians still argue whether these tiny luxuries, milk, sugar, chocolate, had a measurable effect on troop cohesion or morale. Some claim they created divisions, highlighting inequality in rations. Others argue the stories around them actually brought soldiers together, feeding the mythos of the lucky bloke who scored a taste of home. You reckon it depends on the day. Tonight, for instance, you sip your tea in silence. No jokes. No bartering. Just you and the brew. You watch the flames lick the underside of the billy, and for a second, you swear you smell caramel. Just a whiff. Probably your imagination. Probably. You lie back on your ground sheet, cup resting on your chest, and stare up through the canopy. No stars tonight. Just clouds like bruises. You close your eyes and imagine a kitchen. A table. A proper mug. Steam rising from a milky brew. Maybe a slice of bread. Maybe jam. You don't need much. But you'd kill for that milk. The jungle's a little quieter today. Not silent, never silent. But there's a strange lull in the rhythm, like even the frogs are pausing for breath. You and your squad move slow, half out of caution, half out of weariness. Days blur out here. The sun's behind cloud most of the time, and the only real clock is the boiling of tea. By mid-afternoon, you've crept down into a gully dense with twisted vines and roots that look like they've been planning a coup against the trees. The air's thick, thicker than usual, if that's possible, and you can smell wet moss, distant smoke, and weirdly, something like turmeric. You signal a halt. Not because of danger, but because you're standing in front of a banyan tree the size of a truck, and your knees are demanding a break. You settle into a crouch. One by one, the others follow. It's an unspoken agreement. Time to brew. But this time's different. There's another group already here. They're sitting in the clearing, packs open, rifles resting casually on their laps. Their uniforms are worn, their boots even worse, and their faces, half of them, aren't familiar. Except one. A Gurkha. He spots you at the same moment you spot him. No weapons raised. Just a look cautious but calm. You've worked near Gurkhas before, tough as nails, polite to a fault, and famously deadly with their kukris. They're the kind of soldiers you admire from a healthy distance. But here, now, they're just blokes in a clearing, tired and muddy, same as you. The Gurkha gives a small nod, then gestures toward a fire they've already got going. A polite invitation. You glance at your corporal. He nods once. And just like that, tea becomes truce. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Australian and British units, including Gurkhas, often operated in overlapping regions during the Borneo campaign. While formal coordination varied, moments of informal camaraderie, especially over shared rituals like tea, were not uncommon, even across language barriers. You lower your pack, pull out your billy, and approach the fire. One of the Gurkhas is already steeping something in a dented pot, smells earthy, fragrant, and unfamiliar. You sit cross-legged, motions slow, movements open. No sudden gestures. Just mutual exhaustion and curiosity. One of them offers you a tin cup. Inside is tea, yes, but not your tea. It's milder, greener. It tastes faintly of lemongrass, maybe ginger. You sip carefully. It doesn't hit like your brew. It doesn't have that black, smoky depth. But it's good. Calming. The kind of tea that doesn't slap your face, just rests a hand on your shoulder and says, "You're still here." You nod, lift your cup in thanks. The Gurkha grins. No words exchanged. None needed. You make your own batch after that, using your billy, your leaves, standard issue, full blast bitterness. One of them tries it and visibly recoils, blinking hard. Everyone laughs. You grin and say, "Puts hair on your chest." He doesn't understand the words, but he gets the tone. Smiles back, raises a thumb. Here's your quirky tidbit. Soldiers from different Commonwealth units would sometimes swap brews in jungle clearings, experimenting with tea styles like culinary exchange students. The Australians often found themselves stunned by how light or elegant other teas were. Meanwhile, their own brew was described more than once as a punishment with steam. You pass the billy around, and something soft settles over the group. Not sleep, not quite. Just quiet. For a few minutes, no one's talking shop. No tactics. No supplies. No maps. Just men, tea, and a fire. One of the Gurkhas starts humming. A low, steady tune. Wordless. Almost a lullaby. You feel it in your ribs. The notes don't need translating. Historians still argue whether these spontaneous cross-unit moments were strategic coincidence or emotional necessity. You know where you stand. In a jungle that constantly wants to break you down, anything that reminds you of shared humanity becomes a lifeline. You learn that one of the Gurkhas is from a village near Pokhara. He shows you a photo, a tiny black and white of his wife and daughter. Worn at the edges, creased a dozen times. You recognize that look in his eyes. You've seen it in mirrors. You pull out your own letter. The one from your sister. You show him. He can't read it, but he understands. He taps the folded paper and nods. You raise your mugs at the same time. Cheers without sound. You sit there until the light starts to shift, that golden hour where the jungle stops pretending and starts glowing, greens deeper, shadows longer, firelight flickering on faces. No one's saying it, but you all know it's time to move soon. Patrols don't rest for long. You toss the dregs of your tea into the fire. The hiss is instant. Steam curls up like a blessing. Your billy's stained again. You scrub it lightly with a handful of crushed leaves, then give up halfway through. Let it wear its history. It's earned it. You shoulder your pack, give a small wave. One of the Gurkhas flashes a grin and salutes with his tea mug. You return the gesture. No formal goodbye. Just fire, tea, and the sense that, for a few minutes, you were all just men, not soldiers. You move out in opposite directions, slipping into the jungle like ghosts. But the taste of their tea lingers. Gentle. Steady. A reminder that even out here, in the farthest corner of the war, respect can brew beside bitterness. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to keep you going. You can still smell the lemongrass. It clings to your pack, faint and foreign, riding beside the usual aromas of sweat, smoke, and that special jungle funk your boots now emit. You're back in formation, rifle at your side, eyes scanning ahead, but a part of you, a stubborn little part, is still sitting around that shared fire with the Gurkhas, sipping something delicate enough to be called civilized. It was a good moment. Which makes what's about to happen sting even more. The squad moves into a low ravine, not on the map, of course, because jungle terrain has no respect for paperwork, and sets up a temporary rest point. You've been marching for hours. Every muscle in your legs feels like it's on loan from someone twice your age. Everyone's soaked. The air is thicker than stew. The corporal gives the nod. You know what that means. Time for tea. You drop your pack, retrieve the billy, and begin your well-rehearsed ballet. Find twigs, clear space, build fire, boil water, ignore jungle screaming at you. The others are doing the same, a scattered chorus of clicks and clanks and low curses. You strike a match. It flickers, catches. The flame dances to life, fragile and perfect. You build the fire slowly, layering damp wood with care. There's barely any smoke. You're proud of that. It's the kind of fire that says, I've done this before. I've survived this before. The billy's on the flame now. You lean in. Wait for the simmer. That's when it happens. A gust of wind. Sudden. Sharp. Then a flare, a burst of flame that leaps too high, just for a second. You scramble to contain it, tossing your body over the fire, smothering it with your jacket. Too late. The damage is done. Across the ravine, someone shouts. You freeze. Then, gunfire. It rips through the trees, sharp and mechanical, a language of its own. Your head drops. You roll for cover, dragging the billy with you out of habit. Behind a log now, heart pounding, breath tight. You see Jono diving the other way, cursing. You see Mick belly down in the mud, rifle ready, eyes wild. And you know, without doubt, that the fire gave you away. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Numerous small unit engagements in Borneo were triggered not by direct scouting but by visual or olfactory giveaways, movement, smoke, or, more tragically, the glint of a mess tin or flicker of a fire. One patrol diary specifically mentions, "A tea fire that cost us 2 men." Your fire didn't cost lives today. But it came close. 10 minutes later, the skirmish is over. 2 enemy soldiers fled into the trees. One of yours has a nasty graze along his shoulder, not life-threatening, but bad enough that someone breaks out the field dressing. The mood is darker than the jungle canopy. And you? You're sitting beside your billy, staring into it like it betrayed you. The tea never got to boil. You tip the water out, cold and ashamed. It soaks into the jungle floor without a sound. Nobody blames you. Not out loud. But nobody talks either. The corporal glances at your gear as he passes. "Next time, no flame taller than your thumb," he says. Not angry. Just tired. You nod, but it doesn't help. Your hands shake as you repack the billy. The soot's still warm. Jono sits down beside you. Doesn't say a word. Just passes you a dented cup, his. Inside is a small amount of tea. Probably brewed before the flare-up. Lukewarm now. You take it without meeting his eyes and sip. It's weak. Astringent. Tastes vaguely like moss. But it's still tea. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some soldiers developed elaborate systems to avoid fire detection, such as boiling water at dawn when mist would mask the smoke, or digging tiny trenches to contain flames and absorb light. One inventive chap even brewed over a heated rock wrapped in canvas. Took forever. Barely worked. But it kept him alive. You make a note to try something like that tomorrow. If you get it tomorrow. The squad is back on the move before sundown. Quiet now. Focused. The fire's buried. The ash scattered. No trace left but the ache in your gut and the unspoken tension between you and the trees. You march fast and low, senses stretched thin. But every step is haunted by that flame, that moment you lost control. Historians still argue whether these minor mistakes, one bright fire, one misplaced step, should be blamed on lack of training or the simple truth of exhaustion. You know the answer. It's both. You're good at this. But you're also tired. Bone deep, soul sore tired. As night falls, you settle under a leaning tree. No fire tonight. Just cold rations and darker thoughts. You sip the last of Jono's shared brew, now cold and cloudy. You swallow it all. Because even after all that, tea still matters. And you'll make another cup tomorrow. But you'll make it smaller. Safer. Silent. You wake to rain tapping gently on the tarp overhead, a rhythm so soft it almost feels like an apology. Your limbs ache. Your back is a quilt of bruises and mosquito bites. But your mind is already doing its morning loop. Tea. You sit up slowly. Around you, the rest of the squad is rising in staggered grumbles. It's a quiet start. No jokes this morning. Everyone still remembers yesterday. The fire. The shots. The way the trees seemed to tighten afterward, as if the jungle itself was judging you. So today, the plan is simple. No mistakes. No smoke. No more fires bigger than a whisper. You ease the billy from your pack, running a thumb across the dented side like it's an old wound. There's something different about how you approach the ritual now, quieter, more reverent. Less about comfort, more about precision. You hunker low under a tangle of ferns and dig a shallow trench. Not for cover, this one's for the fire. You place 3 smooth rocks in a triangle, then feed tiny slivers of bark and dried moss into the center. Your match is dry. Your hands are steady. And when the flame catches, it stays hidden, glowing like a secret in a pocket. The water takes longer to heat in the trench. You don't mind. You sit and wait. The silence feels earned today. And here it comes, the inevitable, sacred step, adding the leaves. You pinch from the same paper pouch you've been using for weeks. You know how much to use now. Not because there's a label, those wore off long ago, but by touch, by weight, by sheer instinct. A spoonful, maybe 2. More if you're feeling bold. Less if you know you'll need this pouch to stretch. Here's your mainstream historical fact. During the Second World War, Australian troops were known for their ingenuity in stretching ration supplies. A single tea bag or pouch might serve 10 men, boiled and reboiled until it was little more than a shadow of a leaf. It wasn't about taste, it was about ritual. You glance over and see Mick crouched beside his own trench. He's reusing leaves again. 3rd time at least. He stirs the pot solemnly, muttering, "Tastes like wet sock, but it'll do." You smile. Because you know that brew. You've had that brew. You've made that brew. It's what you call a 10-man tea. 1 pouch. 10 blokes. Each one taking turns with the billy, adding water, straining leaves with a sock, cleanish, and sipping like it's the nectar of Olympus. You remember the first time the squad did it, 2 weeks ago, back up near the ridgeline. Rations low. Spirits lower. No one had eaten in almost a day. And someone, maybe Jono, pulled out his last tea pouch and held it up like a golden ticket. "No hoarding," he said. "We're all in." "So you took turns?" "One pot, passed from man to man." The first cup was sharp, dark, almost aggressive. The second was milder. The third? Mostly hot water and optimism. By the 10th round, it tasted like leaf-flavored memory. But still you drank it. Because by then, it wasn't about the taste. It was about belonging. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some soldiers marked each rebra on the pouch itself, scratching little notches into the tin or wrapping, keeping score like some sacred contest. One pouch reportedly made it through 13 rounds before being ceremoniously buried under a tree. Like a fallen mate. Today's brew is somewhere between third and fourth use. Still enough strength to tint the water. Still enough bite to feel real. You sip carefully, aware of how much you've come to rely on this process. Not just for warmth, not even for caffeine, but for anchor. The ritual has become a kind of map. A reminder that no matter how lost you feel out here, this act still points north. Historians still argue whether these shared rituals created stronger unit cohesion or simply masked deeper cracks in morale. You know what you believe. It didn't matter. Tea held you together. You finish your cup, then pour what's left into a second tin lid and pass it to the new bloke. Hughes, barely 20, hasn't stopped shivering since you crossed that river 2 days ago. He takes the lid with both hands like it's made of gold. He sips. He blinks. He exhales. And just like that, the color comes back into his face. You pat your billy dry with a corner of your sleeve. It's still warm. Feels good against your chest. Like a heartbeat that isn't your own. Someone lets out a low belch. Someone else mutters about the rain ruining their socks again. Slowly, softly, the rhythm of normalcy returns. You begin packing up. No trace of the fire. No hint of smoke. Just a dark little patch of earth and the memory of warmth. As you shoulder your gear and fall back into formation, Jono sidles up beside you. "That was a good one," he says. "Third use," you reply. He raises an eyebrow. "Could have fooled me." You grin. Because you've learned something the jungle never expected you to: how to make more from less. How to turn scarcity into ceremony. How to take a single tea pouch and pass it around like it's a holy relic. You march on. 10 men. 1 brew. Endless memory. The jungle changes when the end feels near. You feel it in your bones before anyone says a word. It's not that the danger's past, far from it, but the tempo shifts. Patrols thin out. Orders grow more hesitant. There's a sense that somewhere up the line, decisions are being made that don't involve you, and all you can do is keep walking. But you notice it in the little things, like how the sergeant starts letting the morning brew run a little longer. How no one rushes when packing their gear. How even the leeches feel less aggressive, like they're getting tired too. You're walking through mist now. The trees are close, the trail uneven, and the jungle feels like it's holding its breath. It's cooler than usual. Almost pleasant. You allow yourself to imagine what it'll feel like when you finally don't have to sleep with one boot on, and your rifle cradled like a teddy bear. When you finally get to boil water without looking over your shoulder. You come to a wide, shallow stream, one you've crossed before. You recognize the big flat rock near the bend, where you once spent 20 minutes flicking ants off your billy and wondering if anyone would invent mosquito-proof socks. The water is clearer than usual. Maybe the jungle's giving you a break. You refill the billy and squat nearby. Someone starts a low fire, slow and safe. No drama today. The wood crackles politely. Even the smoke seems well behaved, rising in a thin stream and vanishing above the canopy without fuss. You sit down next to Mick, who's tapping a spoon against his mug in slow rhythm. Not a tune exactly. Just something steady. The water starts to bubble. It's such a quiet moment, you can hear the pop and hiss. You pour in the tea leaves, your last handful, you reckon. You don't bother measuring. You know it by weight now. By heart. Here's your final mainstream historical fact. By the end of the Borneo campaign in mid-1945, Australian soldiers had spent weeks operating deep in the jungle, often beyond the reach of consistent supply lines. Many relied on scrounged rations, bartered items, or foraged ingredients. But tea, by sheer force of culture and determination, remained a daily constant for most units. You let the leaves roll in the boil. You don't rush. You want this one to be strong. Jono arrives late to the fire, a half grin on his face, and mutters, "Still kicking, are we?" "Only just," you say. The first sip is sharp. Strong enough to stir the ghosts in your gut. Everyone's got a cup now, some real, some fashioned from tins, one bloke using the bottom of a ration tin he hammered flat and bent into a scoop. You'd laugh if it weren't so normal. Mick raises his cup like it's a toast. "To the brew." A few grunts of agreement. Jono adds, "And to not dying in this damp hellhole." You raise your mug. "Boil. Brew. Repeat." It gets a chuckle. A quiet one, but genuine. You take another sip. You let it sit. You let it be. This isn't a rushed brew. This isn't a panic boil. This one's for breathing. For remembering. You think about all the fires you've crouched beside. All the times you brewed in silence, in fear, in exhaustion, in joy. The times you shared a pouch. The times you gave up your last sip. The times someone handed you half a cup and didn't say a word, because that was the kindest thing they could do. Here's your final quirky tidbit. Some blokes swore they'd never touch tea again after the war. Claimed they'd had enough to steep a lifetime. But when they got home, back to their kitchens, their porches, their peace, they still boiled the billy. Still stirred the leaves. Because once the war left them, the tea never did. You look down at the billy. It's nearly empty. You don't refill it. This one's meant to end. Historians still argue whether rituals like this helped men survive or just gave them something to do between horrors. But in this moment, as you sip the last of the brew with your mates in a clearing that might finally stay quiet, you know it helped. You're tired. But whole. So you sit for just a bit longer. Let the final warmth settle in your chest. The tea's gone. The fire's out. And the jungle exhales. The jungle grows still. You lie back on your canvas sheet, your hands behind your head, listening to the soft crackle of cooling coals and the gentle drip of water from high above. Everything has slowed now. The boots are still. The rifles are silent. The fire is a faint red eye in the earth. Your breath comes easier. You feel the weight of the day lifting, not all at once, but like steam rising from the billy, quiet, steady, fading into the dark. The tea lingers in your blood. It always does. Not the taste anymore, but the memory. The small comfort. The shared warmth. A mug passed from one tired hand to another. Your eyes grow heavy. You think about the smell of home. The dry crackle of a real hearth. Clean socks, maybe? A quiet room. A proper bed. But even here, beneath this tangled green ceiling, you're okay. Because you've carved out a little bit of home with every cup. With every boil. With every flame that burned just long enough to keep you tethered. You hear someone sigh beside you. Someone else snoring softly. The jungle sings its night song, not so menacing now. Just background. Just the world turning. Your billy can rest beside you, empty but full of stories. And you? You're safe. You're still. You're steeped in peace. Sleep comes easy now.